The massive chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with nervous energy as representatives from over 200 alien species gathered for an emergency session. Floating platforms carried delegates to their designated spots, creating a living amphitheater of diverse life forms. At the center of it all stood Admiral Krev, his tall, gray-skinned figure commanding attention as he prepared to address the Council about humanity's recent achievement of faster-than-light travel. Honorable members of the Council, Admiral Krev's voice boomed through the chamber, his four arms gesturing at the holographic display floating above him. As your military advisor, I must address the matter of Earth's recent application for membership in the Galactic Trade Alliance. The hologram shifted, showing images of Earth's space fleet. Several council members leaned forward, their various sensory organs focused on the display. As you can see, Krev continued, a hint of amusement in his voice. Their entire fleet is, well, tiny. He chuckled, and several other delegates joined in. Their largest vessel is barely the size of our standard cargo shuttles. Even the smallest racing ships of the Proxima Confederation are larger than their so-called battleships. Elder Vax, one of the oldest members of the Council, raised his crystalline appendage. Admiral, if I may remind you of the Council's policy regarding emerging civilizations. Yes, yes. Krev waved one of his hands dismissively. But look at these specs. The hologram zoomed in on a human destroyer. Their weapons are primitive, their shields are basic, and their ships, he paused for effect, are absolutely adorable. More laughter rippled through the chamber. Even Elder Vax's crystalline form flickered with amusement. In the observers section, Captain Ross shifted uncomfortably in his seat. As a merchant who had actually encountered human ships during his trading runs, something about them had always seemed different. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, that the way they moved, the way they operated, it wasn't like anything he'd seen before. The humans have requested full trading rights, Krev continued, but I recommend we grant them only limited access to non-critical trade routes. Their fleet is clearly incapable of defending major shipping lanes, and we wouldn't want to burden our patrol ships with protecting such vulnerable vessels. The Council murmured in agreement. It made sense. After all, every other spacefaring race had followed the same path. Bigger ships, more powerful weapons, larger crews. The humans' approach seemed almost backward by comparison. However, Krev added, displaying another image, their resource extraction and manufacturing capabilities are quite impressive for their technological level. Limited trade rights would allow us to benefit from their industrial output while protecting them from the harsher realities of galactic commerce. Elder Vax's crystalline form pulsed with blue light, a sign of contemplation. And what do the humans say about their fleet design? Oh, they claim it's optimized for efficiency, Krev said, making air quotes with two of his hands while the other two operated the hologram controls. Something about their historical naval warfare experiences. Frankly, I stopped paying attention after they started rambling about some ancient battle called Midway. The chamber filled with more laughter. The idea that ancient water-based naval combat could have any relevance to modern space warfare was apparently hilarious to the assembled delegates. Very well, Elder Vax announced, his crystalline form now glowing with the formal white light of official proceedings. All in favor of granting Earth limited trading rights and designating them as a Category 3 developing civilization. Raise your appendages. The chamber lit up with raised tentacles, arms, light signals, and various other alien appendages. Motion carried. Elder Vax declared, Earth will be granted limited trading rights. Admiral Krev, please ensure their shipping lanes are properly marked as protected space to prevent any unfortunate incidents. Of course, Krev nodded, a patronizing smile on his face. We wouldn't want anything to happen to their cute little ships. As the council session ended and the delegates began filing out, Captain Ross remained in his seat, watching the hologram of the human fleet. There was something about those ships, something in the way their engines were configured, the placement of their weapons, the streamlined design of their hulls. But every time he tried to piece it together, the thought slipped away. Oh well, he thought to himself, rising to leave. They're probably just another young race that would eventually learn to build proper ships. After all, everyone knew that bigger was better in space. Everyone knew that. Right. 3 months after Earth received its limited trading rights, Captain Ross stood before the Council's Security Committee, his hands shaking as he held his datapad. The chamber was smaller than the main council hall, but no less intimidating. With all due respect, Ross said, trying to keep his voice steady, something strange is happening on the trading routes. Admiral Krev leaned back in his chair, looking bored. If this is about the recent pirate activity, we already have patrols handling it. No, sir. It's about the human ships. Ross tapped his datapad, and a holographic video appeared in the center of the room. This footage is from a trading station security feed near the Beta 7 route. The video showed a small human cargo ship smoothly dodging 3 pirate vessels. The human ship moved like water, slipping through gaps that shouldn't have existed, changing direction faster than any ship that size should be able to. Lucky piloting, Krev dismissed with a wave of his hand. The ship is so small, it's harder to hit. Nothing remarkable. Ross played another video. This time, 2 human ships danced around a pirate dreadnought, avoiding every shot while maintaining their course. This is the 4th incident this month. Not one human ship has been lost to pirates. Not one. Elder Vax's crystalline form flickered with interest. Their success rate is unusual. It's more than unusual, Ross insisted. I've been watching them. Their ships don't move like ours. They don't fight like ours. They don't even dock like ours. Everything they do is different. The committee members exchanged glances. A junior analyst, Green, spoke up. We've been monitoring their shipyards. They're still building the same small vessels. No sign of capital ship construction at all. Exactly, Ross exclaimed. Why? Every civilization builds bigger ships as they advance. It's the natural progression. But the humans, they're just making more small ones, and they're adding something to their existing ships. Look. He played another video, this one showing the human ship in a repair dock. The footage was grainy, taken from far away. See those modifications? They're not adding weapons or armor. They're adding, well, I don't know what they're adding, but after every upgrade, their ships move even better than before. Admiral Krev stood up, his towering frame casting a shadow over Ross. Captain, you're seeing phantoms. The humans are a young race playing with small ships because they don't know any better. Their success against pirates is simply due to the pirates not considering them worth the effort. Then explain this, Ross said, playing one final video. It showed a human ship approaching a trading station. The sensor readings were clearly visible. Look at their power output. It's almost as high as a cruiser, but packed into a ship 1/10 the size. How is that possible? Faulty sensors, Krev snapped. This meeting is a waste of time. The humans are exactly what they appear to be, a primitive race with primitive ships. End of discussion. Elder Vax raised his appendage. Perhaps we should increase monitoring off. With all respect, Elder, Krev interrupted, we have real threats to worry about. The Dominion is pushing at our borders again. We don't have resources to waste watching a bunch of tiny human ships avoid some pirates. The committee nodded in agreement, and Ross felt his heart sink. As the members filed out, Elder Vax approached him. That was interesting footage, Captain, the Elder said softly, his crystalline form pulsing with gentle colors. Keep watching. Keep recording. Ross nodded gratefully, but as he left the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were all missing something important. In his quarters that night, he reviewed the footage again, focusing on one particular frame where a human ship pulled a maneuver that should have torn it apart. The ship's designation was clearly visible. TSS Swift Justice. Ross made a note of the name. He had a feeling he would be hearing about that ship again. Meanwhile, in Earth's orbital shipyards, construction continued. Small ships, efficient ships, ships that moved in ways that defied conventional physics. And in every human space station, naval officers smiled quietly to themselves as they read reports of yet another lucky escape from pirates. They knew it wasn't luck. It was never luck. It was preparation. The emergency alert woke Captain Ross in the middle of his sleep cycle. Red lights flashed throughout his quarters as he rushed to the trading station's command center. The scene that greeted him made his blood run cold. On the main screen, a massive Dominion warfleet hung in space like a swarm of angry insects. 50 capital ships, each big enough to swallow a small moon. 200 cruisers, support ships beyond counting. And at their head, the infamous Planet Breaker, the Dominion's flagship that earned its name by cracking worlds in half. Status report. Ross barked, taking his position at the command console. The Dominion fleet just jumped in at the edge of the Arcturus sector, his sensor officer replied. They're heading straight for Earth. Ross felt his chest tighten. Get me the council. Now. Minutes later, the emergency session of the Galactic Council flickered to life on his screen. Admiral Krev was already speaking. Clearly a show of force. The Dominion knows we can't afford a war right now. They're just taking some insignificant territory to test our resolve. Insignificant? Ross couldn't hold back. There are 11 billion humans on Earth. And they had their chance to build proper defenses. Krev shot back. Instead, they wasted time with their tiny ships and strange modifications. The Dominion will make quick work of their fleet and add Earth to their empire. It's regrettable, but hardly worth starting a galactic war over. The Dominion's message played across all channels, their deep, rumbling voices filled with contempt. To the primitive species called humans, your territory is now part of the Dominion. Your pathetic fleet of miniature vessels amuses us. Surrender now, and we may preserve some of your cities as museums of primitive engineering. Resist, and we will demonstrate why size matters in space warfare. Ross watched in horror as the council members nodded in agreement with Krev's assessment. Only Elder Vax seemed troubled, his crystalline form clouded with worry. The motion before the council, the head elder announced, is to issue a formal protest of the Dominion's aggression while maintaining our neutral stance. All in favor. The vote was almost unanimous. Earth would face the Dominion alone. But as Ross watched the human response to the Dominion's threat, something seemed off. There was no panic, no desperate pleas for help. Instead, the humans sent a single, short message. Your terms are noted. Please proceed to the designated coordinates for surrender proceedings. The coordinates they provided were deep in their own territory. The Dominion leadership laughed at this response. They think to choose the place of their defeat. How quaint. Very well, we will humor them. Forward. Ross watched the tactical display as the human ships did something unexpected. Instead of grouping up for a final stand, they scattered. Hundreds of small ships spreading out across dozens of systems, seemingly at random. Admiral Krebs' mocking voice cut through the command center. Look at them flee. These humans don't even know how to die properly. Their tiny toys run away instead of facing defeat with honor. But Ross noticed something strange. The human ships weren't running away. They were moving with purpose, taking up positions that seemed random at first glance. But he pulled up the old naval warfare documents he'd been studying. His eyes widened as he recognized the pattern. It was an ancient human naval formation, adapted for three-dimensional space. The humans weren't retreating. They were setting a trap. My God, he whispered. They wanted the Dominion to come in. On his screen, he watched the TSS Swift Justice and her sister ships slide into their final positions. The Dominion fleet pressed forward, their massive ships proud and unstoppable, completely unaware that they were sailing into carefully prepared killing zones. The last transmission from Earth's command came through. All ships, maintain position. Let them come to us. Remember your training. Remember Midway." Ross sat back in his chair, finally understanding. The humans had never needed bigger ships. They had something far more dangerous. They had a plan. Inside the TSS Swift Justice, Commander Jack Thompson watched his tactical display with steady eyes. The massive Dominion fleet was moving exactly as predicted, their arrogance making them predictable. Each of their capital ships could have swallowed his vessel whole, but size had never won a war by itself. "Status report," he ordered, his voice calm despite the tension filling the bridge. Lieutenant Amy Parker responded from her tactical station. "All ships in position, sir. The Dominion fleet is following the exact course we projected. They're taking the bait." "Of course they are," Thompson smiled. "They think we're running scared, just like the Japanese thought at Midway." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Years of training had prepared them for this moment. Centuries of naval warfare experience had taught humanity one crucial lesson. It's not the size of the ship in the fight, but the fight in the ship that matters. On the main screen, the Dominion's planet breaker led its fleet forward like a massive arrow aimed at Earth's heart. Their confidence was almost palpable. After all, each of their smaller support ships was larger than Earth's biggest vessel. "Message from command," Parker announced. "Operation Scattered Fleet is green across the board. All units report ready." Thompson nodded. "Send the coded signal. Remember Pearl Harbor." Across 50 star systems, human ships acknowledged the message. Small, agile vessels waited in carefully chosen positions. Each crew knew their role in the coming battle. Each ship was positioned to exploit the weaknesses that no one else had noticed in the massive alien vessels. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council's observation chamber, Admiral Krev was giving a speech. "Watch closely," he said to the assembled delegates. "This will be a textbook example of why developing races should focus on proper ship design. The Dominion will make quick work of these human toys." Captain Ross, standing at the back of the chamber, wasn't so sure. He'd been studying the positions of the human ships, and something about their patterns seemed familiar. It tickled at his memory like an old story he couldn't quite recall. On the tactical display, the Dominion fleet moved deeper into human space. Their massive ships were arranged in traditional attack formation. Capital ships in the center, cruisers forming a protective sphere around them, smaller ships probing ahead. "Such a waste," Krev sighed theatrically. "The humans don't even understand basic fleet tactics. Their ships are scattered like dust in the wind." But Ross noticed something the others had missed. The human ships weren't scattered randomly. They were positioned like hunters around a trap, each one placed to cut off a specific escape route. The patterns overlapped in 3 dimensions, creating a web that would only become visible when it was too late. Back on the Swift Justice, Thompson received the final confirmation. The Dominion fleet had crossed the point of no return. "Send to all ships," he ordered. "Execute Operation Midway." Repeat, execute Operation Midway. Across human space, hundreds of small ships powered up systems that had remained hidden until now. Systems that defied conventional wisdom about ship design. Systems that no one had noticed because they had been looking for the wrong things. "Sir," Parker reported, excitement creeping into her voice, "the Dominion fleet is exactly where we want them. Their formation is perfect for their style of warfare." Thompson allowed himself a small smile. Funny how history repeats itself. They're doing exactly what everyone has done for the past 1,000 years of space warfare. Big ships, big guns, predictable tactics. He stood up, straightening his uniform. But humanity learned something different from our ocean navies. We learned that sometimes the smallest ships can change the course of history. We learned at Midway, at Pearl Harbor, in the Atlantic convoys. And now, "Sir," Parker interrupted, "Dominion fleet is starting their final approach. They're launching their victory announcement." "Let them talk," Thompson said. "In about 10 minutes, they're going to learn what every naval power in Earth's history learned the hard way." He looked at the tactical display one last time. checking the positions of hundreds of human ships, each one exactly where it needed to be. Sometimes the smallest predators are the deadliest. The Dominion Fleet Admiral stood proudly on his bridge, his massive form towering over his subordinates. The Planet Breaker's command center was larger than most human ships, a fact he found endlessly amusing. On his main screen, the scattered human vessels looked like tiny dots against the vastness of space. "Send the final warning," he ordered. "Let them see the futility of resistance." But before his communications officer could act, something strange happened. The tiny human ships began to change. Across the battlefield, panels slid away from human vessels, revealing systems that had been carefully hidden. Weapons ports appeared where none had been detected. Hull sections shifted, realigning into new configurations. Power signatures suddenly doubled, then tripled. On the TSS Swift Justice, Commander Thompson gave the order they'd all been waiting for. All ships, drop stealth protocols. Show them what humanity's tiny fleet can really do. In the Galactic Council chamber, Admiral Krev's jaw dropped as new sensor readings flooded in. "Impossible," he whispered. "Those power readings, they can't be right." Captain Ross leaned forward, finally understanding what he'd been seeing all along. "They weren't building primitive ships," he said in awe. "They were building space-going submarines." The human ships had never been simple or primitive. They were compact marvels of engineering, designed with centuries of naval warfare experience. Each vessel packed the firepower of a ship 10 times its size into a hull that could dance through space like a leaf on the wind. The Dominion Admiral's confidence turned to confusion as his sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The human ships were putting out energy signatures that should have been impossible for their size. Their hulls were lined with technology that had somehow stayed hidden from every scan. "How?" he demanded. "How did they hide all this?" On the Swift Justice, Lieutenant Parker allowed herself a small smile. "Sir, all ships report ready. The Dominion fleet is completely surrounded." Thompson nodded. "Send the message we prepared." Across every channel, in every frequency, the humans broadcast their response. "To the Dominion fleet. You assumed our ships were primitive because they were small. You thought size determined power. This was your mistake. On Earth, we learned long ago that victory belongs not to the biggest, but to the smartest. Your ships are large and impressive. Ours are compact and lethal. You built dreadnoughts. We built hunters." In the council chamber, the tactical display told the story. The scattered human ships had never been fleeing. They had positioned themselves perfectly to exploit every weakness in the massive Dominion vessels. The tiny human ships had power-to-size ratios that defied conventional wisdom, weapons that had been miniaturized beyond what anyone thought possible, and maneuverability that made them almost impossible to target. "Look at their design," Ross explained to the stunned council members. "They're not trying to match the Dominion ship for ship. They're using their size as an advantage. Those aren't just warships. They're space-going wolf packs." Admiral Krev watched in growing horror as he realized the truth. The humans hadn't failed to build proper ships. They had completely revolutionized ship design. While every other race had focused on building bigger vessels, humanity had taken a different path. They had learned from their own history, from battles fought on Earth's oceans, that sometimes the smallest ships could change the course of war. On the Planet Breaker's bridge, the Dominion Admiral finally understood what he was seeing. Each human ship was a masterpiece of efficient design, with systems layered in ways his engineers had never imagined possible. There were no wasted spaces, no oversized corridors, no massive chambers built to impress. Everything was dedicated to one purpose: combat effectiveness. And now his massive, impressive fleet was surrounded by hundreds of these deadly little hunters. The humans sent one final message: "You mocked our tiny fleet. Now let us show you why size isn't everything." All ships, battle stations. Operation Midway begins now. The battle began like a dance. Hundreds of human ships moved in perfect coordination, their formations flowing like schools of fish through the void of space. The massive Dominion vessels tried to track them, but the smaller ships were already moving. Wolfpack Alpha, engage, Commander Thompson ordered from the Swift Justice. Show them what we learned from the Battle of the Atlantic. 3 groups of 5 ships each broke formation, darting between the Dominion's capital ships. Their size, once mocked, now made them nearly impossible to hit. The huge Dominion guns were designed to fight equally huge ships, not these swift, agile targets. How are they moving like that? The Dominion admiral roared as another volley from the planet breaker missed completely. Nothing that size should be able to change direction that fast. On his tactical display, the human ships were executing maneuvers that should have torn them apart. They spun, rolled, and changed direction instantly, their advanced inertial dampeners and compact designs allowing them to ignore the limitations that plagued larger ships. Wolfpack Beta, target their engines, Thompson commanded. Wolfpack Charlie, prepare for attack run on their command ships. In the council chamber, Captain Ross watched in amazement as the human fleet demonstrated centuries of naval tactics adapted for space warfare. Look at their attack patterns, he explained to the stunned observers. They're using submarine warfare techniques. Hit and fade, coordinated strikes, targeting critical systems. Admiral Krev could only watch in silence as his entire understanding of space combat crumbled. The human ships weren't just fighting. They were revolutionizing warfare before his eyes. On the Planet Breaker's bridge, chaos erupted as warnings blared. Multiple hull breaches. An officer shouted. Their weapons. They're not trying to destroy us. They're conducting surgical strikes. The human ships had packed their small frames with precision weapons. Instead of trying to match the raw power of the Dominion's massive guns, they targeted specific systems with devastating accuracy. Engines failed. Weapon systems went dark. Communications arrays shattered. Sir, Lieutenant Parker called out on the Swift Justice. The Dominion fleet is trying to regroup. They're moving their smaller ships to protect their capital vessels. Thompson smiled. Just as expected. All ships, execute pattern Delta. Show them why we studied the Battle of Midway. The human fleet's scattered formation suddenly made sense. As the Dominion ships clustered together, they found themselves boxed in. Every attempt to maneuver put them in the sights of another group of human vessels. Impossible. The Dominion admiral raged as another volley of precision strikes disabled 3 of his cruisers. Their targeting systems. How can they be this accurate? The answer was simple. The humans had learned long ago that bigger wasn't always better. Their compact ships housed targeting computers that made full use of their superior maneuverability. While the Dominion relied on overwhelming force, the humans struck with surgical precision. Wolfpack Echo, disable their flag bridge, Thompson ordered. Let's end this. 5 ships, each no larger than a Dominion shuttle, dove through a storm of defensive fire. They moved in perfect formation, each protecting the other's blind spots. The Planet Breaker's massive guns couldn't track them. Its point defense systems couldn't lock on. In the council chamber, even Admiral Krev had fallen silent. The tactical display told the story. The mighty Dominion fleet was being systematically taken apart by ships they had dismissed as toys. All ships, final attack run. Thompson's voice was steady as he gave the command. Remember Pearl Harbor. Remember what happens when you underestimate your enemy. The Swift Justice led the charge, its small frame concealing enough firepower to cripple ships 10 times its size. The human vessels struck from all directions at once, their precise attacks cutting through shields and armor with terrifying efficiency. On the Planet Breaker's bridge, the Dominion admiral watched his mighty fleet being dismantled by ships he had mocked hours earlier. His final words, broadcast across all channels, would be remembered for generations. We thought size meant power. We were wrong. These aren't tiny ships at all. They're perfect killing machines. 1 week after the battle, the Galactic Council chamber was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every spacefaring race had come to witness the emergency session. At the center of attention stood Commander Thompson, his small human frame drawing every eye in the room. Admiral Krev, looking considerably humbler than before, addressed the council first. "Honorable members, we are here to reassess our understanding of human military capabilities." He paused, swallowing his pride, "and to formally apologize for our previous dismissal of their technological achievements." The tactical replay floated above the chamber, showing how the tiny human fleet had systematically dismantled the mighty Dominion Armada. The Planet Breaker, once the most feared ship in the galaxy, now floated powerless in human space, its crew rescued by the very ships they had mocked. "Commander Thompson," Elder Vax's crystalline form glowed with respect, "would you explain to the Council how humanity achieved such remarkable advances in ship design?" Thompson stepped forward, his voice clear and steady. "The answer is simple, honored Council. We learned from our own history. On Earth, we fought wars on vast oceans. We learned that the biggest ship doesn't always win. We learned that efficiency, strategy, and skill matter more than size." He gestured to the holographic display. "Our ships aren't small because we can't build bigger ones. They're small because that's what works best. We took every system you would find in a capital ship and asked ourselves, how can we make this smaller, more efficient, more effective?" Captain Ross, now standing proudly among the human delegation, watched as understanding dawned on the council members' faces. "But the power requirements," one delegate began, "were solved by thinking differently," Thompson explained. "We didn't try to build bigger reactors. We built better ones. We didn't need massive gun batteries when precise, targeted weapons could do more damage. We didn't need huge engines when optimized designs could give us better maneuverability." The council chamber buzzed with excitement as Thompson brought up technical diagrams of human ships. What had once been dismissed as primitive now revealed itself as elegant advanced engineering. "Your ships," Admiral Krev admitted, "they're not just warships. They're a completely new approach to space combat." "Yes," Thompson nodded. "We call it the efficient combat doctrine. Everything has a purpose. Nothing is wasted on size for size's sake. Our ships are small because they need to be small to be effective." Elder Vax raised his crystalline appendage. "The Council proposes an immediate revision of Earth's status. We recommend full membership in the Galactic Alliance, with Earth taking a leading role in military strategic planning." The vote was unanimous. As the chamber erupted in discussion, a junior delegate asked the question everyone was thinking. "But what about the Dominion? Surely they'll seek revenge." Thompson smiled. "Actually, their admiral has requested a joint training exercise." He said, and I quote, "We would be fools not to learn from those who proved us fools." Captain Ross couldn't help but laugh. The same ships that had been called toys were now being studied by every major power in the galaxy. Humanity's approach to spacecraft design was revolutionizing military doctrine across known space. "One last question," Admiral Krev said, humility clear in his voice. "Those historical battles you kept referencing, Midway, Pearl Harbor, the Atlantic convoys, you planned this all along, didn't you? You knew everyone would underestimate your ships." "Let's just say," Thompson replied with a slight smile, "that humanity has learned it's sometimes better to be underestimated. Size isn't everything. Never has been. Never will be." As the council session ended, Ross overheard two delegates discussing the future. "Everything will change now," one said. "Ship design, tactical doctrine, strategic planning." "No," the other replied, watching the human delegation leave. "Everything already has changed. We just didn't notice until it was too late." Outside the chamber, Thompson met with his crew. The TSS Swift Justice waited in orbit, its small frame now commanding respect rather than ridicule. He looked at his ship with pride, remembering an old Earth saying, "It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog." Humanity had proved the true on Earth's oceans. Now they had proved it among the stars. And the galaxy would never be the same.